It started with a flicker, a faint, almost ignorable signature in a sea of stars. Astronomers at the Vera Rubin Observatory in Chile noticed it first, a slight deviation in brightness from the interstellar traveler known as 3I Atlas. At first, no one thought much of it. After all, 3I Atlas had been unpredictable since the day it entered our solar system, glowing, shifting, spinning with movements that defied the laws of celestial mechanics. But this time, the anomaly wasn't just strange, it was terrifying. Because this was the 10th one. 10 recorded deviations, each more extreme than the last. And now, something about this 10th event didn't add up. Researchers at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory were tracking it when suddenly its light signature split into 2 distinct wavelengths. The data looked like 2 separate objects occupying the same space, merging, dividing, pulsing like a heartbeat. Dr. Stephen Burns, the same geophysicist who had been monitoring 3I Atlas for months, described it best. He said, "It's as if it's alive, as if it's responding to something." But responding to what? Across the world, observatories began to synchronize from the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope in Chile to Keck Observatory in Hawaii. Even the James Webb Space Telescope adjusted its lens toward the faint green glow emanating near the object. That glow was spreading. When the data from Webb's infrared detectors came through, scientists froze. The object wasn't just reflecting sunlight, it was generating its own thermal pattern. Patterns shaped like geometry. Triangular arrays of heat blooming across its surface, evenly spaced, pulsing every 4.6 seconds. To the untrained eye, it might have looked like nothing. But to astrophysicists, it resembled something eerily familiar. Structured signaling. It wasn't random, it was rhythm, and that was when everything changed. The Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics released a confidential memo later leaked online, referencing plasma-bound anomalies consistent with non-gravitational propulsion, a phrase that immediately caused public panic once it surfaced. Non-gravitational propulsion? In plain language, something was pushing 3I Atlas, but not by gravity, gas, jets, or sunlight. Something else was moving it. The 10th anomaly was different, because, for the first time, the acceleration reversed direction. Instead of being pushed away from the Sun, 3I Atlas slowed, turned slightly, and accelerated toward the inner solar system again. Every known model failed. NASA's JPL trajectory simulation broke mid-run. Even ESA's Gaia mission couldn't predict its new path. And then came the sound. On October 17th, the Arecibo Legacy Data Archive picked up an unexpected radio echo, a repeating hum buried beneath background noise. When cleaned through digital filters, it resembled a low-frequency pulse that matched the exact timing of the 3I Atlas geometric flashes seen by James Webb. The 2 signals, light and radio, were synchronized to the millisecond. That meant one thing. 3I Atlas wasn't just accelerating, it was communicating. And maybe not alone. The signal spread. At first, it was subtle, barely noticeable against the cosmic background noise. But then, instruments across NASA's Deep Space Network began picking it up too. The strange pulse linked to 3I Atlas was now echoing across multiple frequencies, some of which matched historical telemetry bands once used by Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. The data logs showed something impossible. A 0.14-second delay between Voyager 1's routine transmissions and a faint mirrored response coming not from Earth but from the same direction as 3I Atlas. At the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, analysts tried to dismiss it as reflection, a simple interplanetary bounce. But when the waveform was compared to signals recorded by the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory, the patterns aligned too perfectly. It wasn't an echo, it was a reply. And that reply grew stronger every hour. By the next morning, the James Webb Space Telescope's mid-infrared instrument recorded microbursts of energy flickering along 3I Atlas's surface, tiny waves of heat running across its structure like a pulse. They moved in a precise rhythm. 12 bursts, pause, 12 bursts again. Dr. Stephan Burns looked at the numbers and went silent. He had seen this pattern before. Decades ago, the Arecibo Observatory had transmitted the famous binary message toward the star cluster M13, a mathematical greeting encoded in primes, atomic numbers, and the outline of a human figure. 3I Atlas's new energy pattern matched the Arecibo structure exactly but reversed, as if the message had been received, decoded, and sent back from somewhere else. The revelation sent shockwaves through NASA JPL. Internal teams labeled the event Anomaly 10R, R for return. And then came the image. At 3:12 UTC, Hubble's Wide Field Camera 3 captured something no one was ready for. A glowing arch of green-white plasma forming behind 3I Atlas, curling like a halo. Within that ring, multiple smaller objects shimmered in formation, tiny, symmetric dots moving in perfect coordination. Analysts at Vera Rubin Observatory ran parallax checks. The dots weren't background stars. They were moving with the main body, keeping formation like escorts. For the first time, scientists began asking aloud the question the public had whispered for months. What if 3I Atlas was never one object at all? If this interstellar traveler was, instead, a convoy, an engineered system, then the 10th anomaly wasn't a malfunction, it was activation. As data poured in, something else began happening. Earth's magnetosphere recorded micro-fluctuations synchronous with the object's pulses. Not strong enough to harm satellites, but rhythmic, measurable, and global. The ESA's Swarm mission, designed to monitor Earth's magnetic field, logged the tremors and confirmed the field was resonating not randomly, but harmonically with 3I Atlas's frequency. The numbers painted a single chilling truth. Whatever that object was doing out there, it had found a way to touch Earth. And when Keck Observatory released its latest spectrum, one element stood out, an emission line that didn't correspond to any known chemical signature in astrophysics. A hybrid between carbon dioxide plasma and ionized silicate. Something that shouldn't coexist naturally. Burns stared at the readout. His voice cracked when he spoke. Either this thing is creating new matter, or we're watching something rewrite physics. No one in the room breathed for a long time. Outside, the world slept unaware that a traveler from the void had just begun to hum in a tone the universe hadn't heard before. And this was only the beginning of Anomaly 10. Within days, the hum became a pattern, a whisper looping through space, heard by every deep space receiver across the planet. At NASA's Deep Space Network in Goldstone, engineers were stunned. The signal wasn't just repeating, it was changing. The frequency was slowly drifting downward, forming a modulation that resembled voice compression. Not human, not mechanical, something between. At the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Dr. Elaine Chow noticed something chilling buried in the noise floor of the signal. When the waveform was sped up by a factor of 8.3, the modulation produced harmonic peaks, harmonics that corresponded to the same ratios used in the Voyager Golden Record greeting tones. It was as if the signal recognized humanity's own voice. And then James Webb saw movement. On November 4th, Webb's near-infrared camera recorded what appeared to be an oscillation deep inside 3I Atlas's nucleus. Not a reflection, not a dust outburst, but internal motion. Webb tracked it for 6 hours. The pattern repeated every 54 minutes. An expansion, contraction, and then a thin plume of plasma ejecting from a circular fissure. The motion wasn't chaotic. It was rhythmic, coordinated. Analysts at Vera Rubin Observatory plotted the changes across consecutive frames, and something remarkable emerged. The plasma ejector aligned in a geometric lattice 12 perfect points, forming what resembled a spiral fractal. "This isn't a natural venting," said Dr. Stephen Burns during a private session at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. "It's an internal system. It's behaving like a drive." But if 3I Atlas was powered, then by what? Data from Keck Observatory in Hawaii revealed a spectral anomaly, traces of charged molecular hydrogen and exotic carbon clusters. These compounds only exist under immense electromagnetic pressure, the kind used in artificial magnetic confinement systems. And that's when things started going wrong on Earth. At exactly 3:47 UTC ground stations in Australia, Japan, and Spain recorded simultaneous power fluctuations. Their equipment wasn't connected, yet all three showed spikes in the same waveform as the 3I Atlas signal. It wasn't interference, it was resonance. Somehow, whatever was happening out there was bleeding into us. Meanwhile, ESA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory captured a strange distortion near the Sun's corona. A faint crescent shape, metallic-looking, shadowed drifted along the same ecliptic path as 3I Atlas. NASA refused to comment, but leaked internal emails hinted that the Voyager 1 telemetry team at JPL had noticed a strange bounce-back signature from the direction of 3I Atlas. The probe, now more than 15 billion miles away, had received and returned a signal it wasn't programmed to handle. For the first time, astronomers began asking a question they weren't supposed to. What if 3I Atlas is communicating through our oldest machines? Because as Webb watched, the object pulsed again. But this time, it didn't aim toward the Sunday. It aimed at Earth. Something was happening slowly, but undeniably. Every observatory now tracking 3I Atlas began reporting slight distortions in their optical data. The light from nearby stars appeared to bend more than expected as it passed near the object, almost as if the region of space around it was thickening. At Harvard-Smithsonian's Astrophysical Modeling Unit, Dr. Reena Patel called it localized space-time lensing. Not a gravitational lens in the usual sense, those require mass on the order of galaxies, but a smaller, far stranger phenomenon. The data suggested that 3I Atlas was manipulating the very medium of space around itself. And that meant one thing: it was generating its own gravity. The European Southern Observatory's VLT interferometer detected micro-variations in photon timing between its 4 telescopes, confirming that the light from 3I Atlas was delayed by nanoseconds, not random, patterned. The light delay repeated every 19 minutes and 44 seconds, the same interval as the electromagnetic hum NASA was tracking. By this point, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory had quietly assigned the object a new internal classification: Object Alpha 3I, Possible Artificial Phenomenon. Only a handful of scientists were allowed to see the telemetry. Among them was Stephen Burns. And what he found buried inside the frequency data changed everything. When he isolated the lowest harmonic of the 3I Atlas pulse, he realized it was not just one tone. It contained sidebands, faint modulations that matched natural resonant frequencies of known planets. Mercury, Earth, Jupiter, each was there. The signal wasn't random. It was scanning, as if the object was pinging, the solar system reading it, layer by layer. When the Vera Rubin Observatory adjusted its exposure and pushed through the haze, it caught something extraordinary. A faint thread of plasma, like a luminous filament, stretching out from 3I Atlas toward deep space. It wasn't debris, and it wasn't cometary dust. The thread appeared structured, layered, and charged like an interstellar data cable made of light. Even more shocking, it wasn't stationary. It was growing. Over 3 consecutive nights, the filament extended nearly 2 million kilometers farther. NASA's Parker Solar Probe happened to be within telemetry range. Its magnetometers recorded an unexplained electromagnetic ripple sweeping through the solar wind at the same moment 3I Atlas released another pulse. The ripple moved faster than solar wind, faster than light could propagate through normal plasma, a violation of classical physics. The Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics issued a discrete internal memo describing it as superluminal plasma coherence. No one wanted to say it, but everyone was thinking it. If the signal could bend light, generate gravity, and send coherent plasma beyond light speed, it wasn't just alive, it was intelligent. And now Earth's magnetosphere had started to sing. The ESA's swarm satellites, usually quiet monitors of Earth's magnetic field, began detecting synchronized oscillations, echoing the 3I Atlas pulse frequency. Not random noise, perfect harmony. It was as if the entire planet had been tuned to resonate with the traveler. For the first time, Stephen Burns didn't know whether to feel awe or fear, because if the 10th anomaly was communication, then the 11th, whatever it was, might not be a message. It might be an arrival. 3 days after the magnetic resonance began, James Webb's deep field instruments recorded something that no one on the planet could immediately explain. In the void between 3I Atlas and the Sun, a thin streak of violet light had appeared, faint, elongated, and impossibly precise. It wasn't a tail or a flare. Webb's near-spec readings confirmed it was collimated energy, like a laser beam stretching across tens of millions of kilometers. At first, analysts thought it was a data artifact. But then the Keck Observatory in Hawaii saw it too, cutting straight through the black of space. The beam pulsed 3 times in 1 hour, steady, deliberate, measurable. Every pulse matched the same 19-minute, 44-second rhythm that Burns and the ESA satellites had logged earlier. NASA officially called it a coherent optical transmission event. Unofficially, in internal correspondence between JPL and Harvard's astrophysics department, it was called something else, the bridge. The beam appeared to connect 3I Atlas to a small, uncharted object now catalogued as Fragment Delta. The fragment had been dismissed as debris weeks before, but now it was moving, matching 3I Atlas's velocity and trajectory perfectly. When the European Southern Observatory's VLT zoomed in, it noticed a shocking detail. Fragment Delta wasn't tumbling like debris. It was rotating on a fixed axis, maintaining orientation as if stabilizing itself against invisible forces. At that same time, Voyager 1's low-gain antenna suddenly began transmitting telemetry noise bursts that were mathematically synchronized with the optical pulses. Something was using Voyager's dead channels to respond. Burns stared at the plots and whispered, "They're networking." The phenomenon escalated quickly. On November 16th, the James Webb Telescope's eerie instrument recorded temperature spikes across the filament connecting 3I Atlas to the fragment. The readings suggested energy transfer. The filament wasn't a natural connection, it was an active conduit. The plasma bridge pulsed in segments, like a circuit powering on section by section. Each pulse grew stronger than the last until Webb's detectors briefly saturated. The object brightened not from reflection, but from internal power generation. Then, for 12.6 seconds, 3I Atlas released a massive burst of infrared radiation, enough to temporarily overload the detectors of Webb, SOHO, and the Parker Solar Probe simultaneously. When the systems recovered, analysts noticed something deeply unsettling. 3I Atlas was no longer accelerating away from the Sunday. It had changed direction. Its trajectory bent slightly inward toward the inner planets toward Earth's orbital plane. No one could explain how. The object wasn't supposed to have engines. It shouldn't have been capable of steering, let alone defying gravity in open space. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, data engineers triple-checked the readings, hoping for a glitch. But there was no error. The object had executed a precise course correction exactly 0.7 degrees off its projected outbound trajectory. That tiny deviation, when extended across astronomical distance, meant one terrifying thing. By March, 3I Atlas would intersect the orbital path of Earth. As confirmation spread across space agencies, panic began to simmer beneath the surface of calm press statements. The European Space Operations Center quietly redirected multiple ground arrays to focus solely on 3I Atlas. At the same time, the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics was told to suspend all open-access publications related to the object indefinitely, but the leak had already happened. One anonymous technician uploaded a snapshot of the updated orbital simulation to a private astronomy forum. Within minutes, it went viral. Is greater than 3I Atlas is not escaping. It's circling back. Meanwhile, the James Webb Space Telescope detected a disturbing change in the filament connecting 3I Atlas to Fragment Delta. The once straight beam was now oscillating, twisting into complex geometric knots, helix shapes that rotated at fixed intervals, almost as if following a code. Webb's MIRI spectrometer recorded faint light flashes embedded in each twist flashes that, when slowed down, displayed binary sequences repeating one phrase over and over again. Earth orbit calibration. NASA refused to release the data, but someone inside JPL confirmed its authenticity to Leiden University's astronomy network. Whatever it is, the researcher said, it's plotting something, and it's using the planets as reference points. By this point, the Vera Rubin Observatory began picking up faint blue halos around 3I Atlas. Not optical illusions, but ionized radiation rings expanding outward like ripples. Each pulse increased in radius by thousands of kilometers per hour, creating a vast spherical energy field. Inside that field, something was moving. Infrared analysis from the European Southern Observatory revealed smaller nodes forming within the halo, 12 in total. Each one aligned perfectly with a different gravitational axis between the Sun and Earth. They weren't random, they were placed with impossible precision. Dr. Stephen Burns called them anchors. Others whispered a more chilling term, transmission gates. And then, as if on cue, 3I Atlas pulsed again. The Voyager 1 telemetry team confirmed that the probe, still coasting through interstellar space, suddenly switched to its backup transmitter, the one inactive since 1981. The carrier wave it emitted was identical to the 3I Atlas frequency. Something was forcing Voyager to relay. Inside JPL's signal room, every console lit up in synchronized interference. The displays scrambled, forming waveforms shaped like spirals, 12 of them. The same 12 nodes seen in Webb's imagery. And in the silence that followed, a sound bled through the static. It wasn't a tone this time. It was a voice, metallic, distant, and fragmented, repeating one haunting phrase, distorted but clear enough to freeze the room. Alignment achieved. Burns whispered, alignment of what? But no one answered, because in the same moment, satellites in low Earth orbit began to flicker, each one briefly turning to face the same point in space. Straight toward 3I Atlas. Within hours of the alignment event, communications satellites across multiple networks, Starlink, Iridium, ESA's Galileo, and even older defense meteorological satellites began drifting out of their designated orientations. At first, operators thought it was a software anomaly, but telemetry proved otherwise. Each satellite, regardless of its manufacturer or nation, was turning to face one single celestial point, the region of space now dominated by 3I Atlas. Even more unsettling, the orbital adjustments were synchronized to the millisecond. NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center and the U.S. Space Command attempted manual overrides. Every override failed. The satellites simply ignored commands, as if their signal paths had been hijacked or rewritten. The Vera Rubin Observatory recorded the glow from 3I Atlas intensifying. What had been a faint green hue now shimmered with blue plasma streaks tracing across its surface like veins of light crawling through metal. And then came the distortion. At the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Dr. Burns noticed something no one else had seen. The object's silhouette against the stellar background was changing, not rotating, morphing. The once elongated body was reconfiguring, expanding on one axis, compressing on another. Within 3 hours, 3I Atlas no longer resembled a comet or an asteroid. It looked like a vast, symmetrical disk, miles across, reflecting faint bands of polarized light. The disk's outer edge emitted brief radial flashes that perfectly corresponded with each satellite's position above Earth. Every flash, a handshake. When the Deep Space Network in Goldstone analyzed the bandwidth spikes, it discovered each flash carried a compressed signal packet encrypted beyond any terrestrial code. Yet the signature within the packets was familiar. It matched Voyager 1's telemetry language. "Atlas is using our own probe's code," Burns muttered. "It learned from us." Meanwhile, ESA's swarm satellites detected large-scale oscillations rippling through Earth's magnetosphere waves, shaped exactly like the 12-node pattern seen weeks before. That was when the sky changed. People across South America, Europe, and parts of Asia began reporting aurora-like arcs far from the poles. The lights weren't green or red, but deep violet and azure moving in rhythmic pulses like breathing. News outlets called it the silent aurora. But in control rooms, scientists recognized the frequency. It was 3I Atlas's heartbeat. The James Webb Telescope, still focused on the object, captured a new phenomenon. A faint corona of particulate matter expanding outward from the disk's tiny metallic shards, forming an enormous ring structure. Each particle was reflecting light with impossible precision, shimmering like an ocean of mirrors, arranging themselves in geometric order. The structure wasn't random. It was assembling. By now, global space agencies had stopped pretending it was natural. The term interstellar probe appeared in a leaked document from the European Space Agency, alongside a chilling note. Is greater than if Atlas is constructing something, it's doing it using Earth's electromagnetic field as a scaffold. Then came the sound. Radio telescopes from Arecibo's legacy archives to Alma in Chile picked up low-frequency resonance not from space, but from within Earth's own ionosphere. The frequency matched the pattern that first emerged from Atlas's pulse, except this time it was amplified 1,000-fold. The entire planet was vibrating in tune with an alien signal. For Stefan Burns, it became painfully clear. 3I Atlas wasn't just visiting. It was linking. And if the 10th anomaly had been about communication, the 11th was about connection. And connection, in cosmic terms, meant control. The James Webb Space Telescope continued to observe the shimmering disk of 3I Atlas. But now its instruments began to register something even stranger. Within the infrared band, Webb's sensors picked up structured heat zones arranged in a pattern like a city viewed from orbit. It wasn't a uniform glow. Each hotspot pulsed independently, spreading across the disk in hexagonal formations that looked eerily familiar. At first, analysts assumed it was coincidence, until Dr. Burns compared the layout to high-resolution maps of Voyager 1's circuitry. The resemblance was undeniable. "Those aren't random energy nodes," he said quietly during a briefing at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. "They're components. We're looking at architecture." The realization hit everyone in the room like gravity itself. 3I Atlas wasn't just reacting to solar forces, it was assembling itself, cell by cell, using magnetic fields as scaffolding. Over the next 48 hours, Webb's NIRCam recorded smaller objects detaching from the disk's edge, microscopic fragments glinting against sunlight, thousands of them, like seeds spreading in formation. Each fragment carried a faint plasma trail, spiraling inward toward the sun before bending sharply back toward Earth's orbit. The European Southern Observatory's VLT confirmed the particles weren't following natural trajectories. Their collective motion suggested coordination, a swarm pattern identical to what NASA's Parker Solar Probe had once observed in solar flares. Except this wasn't plasma. These were solid, metallic particulates with measurable density. Burns compared the pattern to a self-replicating algorithm, each fragment dividing, aligning, and recombining like a digital organism building something unseen. "It's not a comet," he said. "It's a system." Then, something unexpected appeared in the Webb composite image. Deep within the core of 3I Atlas, amid the fluctuating heat zones, a shape began to emerge, faint, symmetrical, and geometric. It resembled a massive lattice framework, six-sided like honeycomb panels, interconnected by dark ridges that reflected no light. When Webb's Miri filters enhanced the contrast, the outline became impossible to dismiss. It was a hollow structure, stretching for kilometers inside the core with a central void, and at the heart of that void a singular black sphere. The sphere absorbed every wavelength Webb could project. No reflection, no emission, no spectrum. A perfect absence. Dr. Burns whispered into the recording mic, "We're staring at an artificial gravitational well." As soon as that statement was logged, communication from Webb briefly stuttered. For 7 full seconds, the telescope went offline. When data transmission resumed, one of its orientation gyros had reset something that had never happened since its deployment. Downlink logs from the NASA Deep Space Network later showed something chilling. During that same 7-second blackout, 3I Atlas emitted a broadband burst across multiple electromagnetic frequencies, including the same narrowband range used by Webb's transmission system. It had reached out. Not toward Earth this time, toward the telescope watching it. The signal, decoded later at Stanford's radio astronomy lab, contained a repeating sequence of 3 symbols. Not letters, not numbers, frequencies arranged in perfect logarithmic proportion, as if referencing distances or harmonics. And at the end of that pattern, the final frequency matched exactly to one of Earth's orbital resonance points. It wasn't random. It was directional. For the first time, it was clear. 3I Atlas was not simply accelerating. It was targeting. Within hours of that transmission, something began to change in Earth's upper atmosphere. At first, it was subtle minor fluctuations in the magnetosphere, faint auroral patterns flickering across regions where they had never appeared before. Egypt, Brazil, and even parts of the equator. But within a single rotation of the planet, the phenomenon intensified. The ESA swarm satellites detected massive distortions in the magnetic field lines, arcs of energy that seemed to bend unnaturally toward one direction, the exact coordinates of 3I Atlas. It was as if the planet itself were being gently tugged. In the data stream from the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, a new variable emerged, minute gravitational variations, measurable only through atomic clock deviations. The readings implied something unthinkable. The planet's gravity was being interfered with. Across observatories from Chile to Australia, radio frequencies became unstable. The Parkes Observatory in New South Wales reported sudden signal echoes bouncing off the upper atmosphere at impossible altitudes. When triangulated, those echoes drew a geometric grid, 12 perfect arcs, wrapping around Earth's magnetic poles. Dr. Stephen Burns stared at the projection from the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics and whispered, "It's mapping us." That same hour, the James Webb Telescope transmitted a new frame of 3I Atlas. The glowing disk had expanded. Its outer ring was no longer faint blue, it now pulsed deep crimson, flaring like a heartbeat every 7 minutes. Each pulse corresponded precisely to the oscillations detected in Earth's gravity field. It wasn't coincidence anymore. It was synchronization. At JPL, analysts noticed a curious pattern. When the pulse from 3I Atlas reached Earth, deep ocean seismic sensors recorded microscopic vibrations not strong enough to trigger quakes, but measurable enough to indicate energy transfer. The object was interacting not just with the planet's atmosphere, but with its core. Dr. Elaine Porter from Caltech's seismological lab described it bluntly. It's as if the Earth is resonating like a tuning fork being struck by something invisible. Soon, satellites in geostationary orbit began to experience abnormal drift, moving slightly off their orbital planes, as if nudged by an unseen force. Then came a shock no one was ready for. The Hubble Space Telescope detected what appeared to be a faint energy arc connecting 3I Atlas to a point just above Earth's atmosphere, like a filament of plasma stretching across millions of kilometers. Within minutes of that detection, Hubble's camera feed went black. The transmission cut mid-frame. When connection was restored, the arc had vanished. But the imprint of its glow remained, reflecting off the oceans in real-time satellite images. It was clear now. 3I Atlas had not simply accelerated, it had established a link, an invisible bridge between itself and the planet. Every major observatory scrambled for data. Vera Rubin Observatory saw gravitational lensing distortions rippling across the stars behind Atlas. ALMA picked up bursts of microwave radiation, their pattern-matching pulsar intervals, and from the Voyager 1 telemetry relay, another anomaly surfaced, a repeating binary burst translating to 3 simple words. "The map is complete." Burns' voice trembled as he replayed it. "A map of what?" he asked. No one had an answer. But as he looked at the holographic projection of Earth's magnetic field, something dreadful became clear. The alignment of the 12 arcs, the synchronized pulses, the resonant frequencies, they weren't random. Together, they formed a pattern, a rotating sigil centered perfectly on the Earth's equator. Not a map of Earth, a map on Earth. The pattern didn't stay still. It started moving. At first, it rotated so slowly that only the supercomputers at Goddard, ESO, and Vera Rubin Observatory could detect it just a fraction of a degree each hour. But by the next morning, the rotation had accelerated enough for even amateur radio astronomers to see the shift in real-time signal drift. Across the world, quiet disturbances began to appear small, strange, almost forgettable to anyone not paying attention. But they were the warnings. Brazil recorded the first electrical anomaly, a stable power grid suddenly flickering for exactly 3.7 seconds, then restoring itself with no infrastructure damage. Engineers blamed a miscalculated load spike. An hour later, Tokyo's deep-sea sensors, normally whisper quiet, picked up a low-frequency hum rising through the Pacific. It wasn't seismic, it wasn't oceanic, It wasn't tied to tides, plates, or storms. It was rhythmic, and the rhythm matched the pulse from 3I Atlas perfectly. Then came the event in Iceland. At 1:14 a.m. GMT, residents near the Reykjanes Peninsula saw the sky split with silent waves of blue and red light, thin curtains that shimmered like oil on water. They weren't auroras. These lights moved sideways, crawling across the horizon as if tracing invisible lines in the sky. The European Southern Observatory confirmed it minutes later. The lights formed a gigantic spiral, centered directly above the Atlantic. Not above a city, not above a landmass, but directly above Earth's magnetic equator, perfect positioning. At the same time, the James Webb Telescope captured its clearest image of 3I Atlas yet, and the shape had changed again. What was once a glowing disk was now a three-tier structure, almost like concentric rings, rotating independently. Plasma streamed from the outer ring in tightly wound spirals, each one bending space around it with measurable gravitational distortion. And then Webb caught something no one expected. Small objects. Dozens of them. Tiny metallic dots streaming away from 3I Atlas, drifting into formation like a swarm. NASA analysts froze the frame and enhanced the contrast. The swarm wasn't scattering. It was arranging itself. Hundreds of kilometers apart, each object moved with the precision of atomic clock timing, forming a geometric framework around the main body. The pattern mirrored the rotating sigil traced earlier across Earth's magnetic field. Burns's voice cracked as he explained it during the midnight briefing. This isn't a comet shedding fragments, it's deploying something. At Stanford's radiophysics lab, a researcher compared the signal bursts to the historic Bracewell probe concept, a theoretical machine designed to observe, map, and communicate across star systems. And suddenly, the truth hit. 3I Atlas wasn't the message. It was the messenger platform. The swarm, whatever it was, appeared to be instruments, nodes, or receivers, and they were tuning Earth like an antenna. Then, at 2:23 UTC, alarms erupted worldwide. Gravitational sensors in Switzerland, Chile, and Hawaii spiked simultaneously. Earth's upper atmosphere vibrated with a frequency so tightly modulated that it didn't resemble anything natural. Even the Arecibo Legacy Data Archives started registering phantom echoes, despite Arecibo having collapsed years ago. Something was bouncing signals off old data. It was as if 3I Atlas was scanning our entire technological history. The final confirmation came from Hubble. After hours of distortion, it snapped one clean, sharp frame of the swarm, forming a perfectly symmetrical structure, a sphere, a vast one, centering itself between Earth and the object. Dr. Porter gasped when she saw it. It's a shell of sensors, a shell of nodes, a shell pointed at us. And as the image stabilized, a single beam of thin, icy blue light shot outward from the center of 3I Atlas straight into the heart of the swarm's sphere. The moment it made contact, Earth's magnetic field surged so violently that auroras exploded across the equator in a ring of blinding green. Then, for the first time, the pulse stopped. Everything went silent. Space, Earth's atmosphere, the planet's field, even the faint hum in the oceans. A global, breath-holding silence. Burns leaned forward, staring at the last telemetry package before the system crashed. Only 4 words appeared in the decoded portion. Sequence 1 initiated. The silence didn't last long. Less than 4 minutes after the phrase Sequence 1 initiated appeared, the Deep Space Network lit up with overlapping error codes. One after another, satellites began to report spontaneous reboots. Every orbiting body between Earth and 3I Atlas was being touched by something unseen. At first, the engineers thought it was a solar storm, but the sun was quiet. Then they checked the magnetometer logs, and what they saw froze every room on Earth's monitoring grids. The magnetosphere was pulsing. Not randomly, not chaotically. It was breathing, in time, with the light of 3I Atlas. Power plants in Canada, Norway, and South Africa registered simultaneous frequency distortions, all oscillating at the same 0.21 Hz rhythm. Deep-sea cables across the Atlantic began emitting minute magnetic fields, detectable even from orbit. The entire planet was suddenly part of a synchronized electric web. From Vera Rubin Observatory, a new dataset showed the faint swarm between Earth and the object glowing brighter. When infrared filters were applied, each of the hundreds of metallic nodes pulsed with energy transfer arcs of current, bouncing between them like lightning frozen in slow motion. "It's forming a grid," Dr. Elaine Porter said over the comm line from Caltech. "Not around us, through us." The realization spread across control rooms. The swarm wasn't building a shield or weapon. It was building a resonator, tuning the Earth itself as a component. At Keck Observatory in Hawaii, telescopes caught something breathtaking. The massive body of 3I Atlas, still half a comet, half a machine, was rotating. The crimson glow of its outer ring now pulsed in blue-red intervals, the same rhythm as the magnetic surges on Earth. And inside its core, the dark sphere, once invisible, began to shimmer with faint light. Not reflected, generated. The connection. James Webb spectrograph registered wavelengths no natural element should emit, not even under fusion conditions. It was producing radiation patterns resembling data packets, bursts of encoded energy aimed at the swarm's shell. Every time the pulse hit, one of the swarm's nodes flashed, and a cascade of light swept outward toward Earth. The ground beneath the oceans answered with low-frequency vibration. From Chile's Atacama Array, an audio range translation of the frequencies produced a steady, mechanical sound. Not random static, but repeating syllabic patterns. "It's communication," Burns said. "It's not talking to us, it's talking through us." Asterisk. The final blow came when Voyager 1, silent for months, suddenly transmitted a fragment of telemetry from beyond the heliosphere. A faint echo, repeating the same rhythmic pattern, coming from 3I Atlas. The message was older than the event itself, a signal sent years ago. Burns slammed his hand on the console. "It's a loop. They've done this before." As the object's pulse intensified, so did Earth's response. Our Orion reached the tropics. Compasses spun, tides shifted by millimeters. Then a single, focused beam of light descended from the swarm's center, stopping mid-atmosphere above the Pacific. For 7 seconds, night turned white. Every sensor went blind, every instrument maxed out. And yet, every human watching felt nothing. no heat, no shock wave, no thunder. Just a deep, low hum vibrating in their bones. When vision cleared, the beam was gone. So was the swarm. So was the glow of 3I Atlas. All that remained was a perfect black ring hovering above the clouds, a circular void that swallowed the stars behind it, a hole in the sky where light refused to exist. NASA's ground-based radar tried to scan it, but signals never returned. It wasn't a shadow, it wasn't an object, it was a gateway. And then, once again, a transmission crackled through the deep space network. No coordinates, no voice. Just one repeating sequence of words in synthetic modulation is greater than sequence 1 complete. Sequence 2 awaiting response. Dr. Burns looked straight into the camera during the emergency broadcast and said the only thing anyone could think to ask is greater than, did we just answer them? And somewhere, beyond the black ring, a faint light pulsed back, red, then blue, as if something colossal was listening. For days after the black ring appeared, the world seemed unnaturally quiet. The sky had a strange stillness to it. Birds avoided certain regions, satellites moved as if space itself had become heavy, and entire sections of the ionosphere began reflecting signals that no one had sent. In the Deep Space Network Command Center, Stephen Burns and his exhausted team pored over every byte of recovered data from 3I Atlas. The numbers no longer made sense. Readings from the Vera Rubin Observatory indicated background radiation fluctuations that didn't align with any natural model. The distortions weren't random noise, they were structured. They resembled a signature. Across oceans, identical signatures began surfacing in unexpected places under Antarctica's ice shelves, within the Mariana Trench, even beneath the Sahara's crust. Instruments built to detect neutrinos and gravitational waves were now responding to an entirely different kind of interference. Low-frequency electromagnetic waves that mirrored 3I Atlas's last pulse. Then came the reports of the lights. In coastal cities from Chile to Japan, fishermen described faint glows rising from the water, hovering just beneath the surface like submerged stars. Submarine crews recorded sonar returns from metallic shapes arranged in perfect geometric formations, triangles, hexagons, and spirals rotating in silence. Whatever 3I Atlas had done, it hadn't ended when it disappeared. It had activated something. At the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Dr. Eliza Monroe noticed that Earth's magnetic poles were no longer stable, not shifting chaotically, but oscillating, like a pendulum being guided by invisible hands. She compared the oscillation data with the swarm's last recorded motion and froze. The intervals matched exactly. Her voice shook as she told Burns over a scrambled satellite call, is greater than Stephen. The oscillation period matches the swarm's internal timing. It's still controlling the field from somewhere. The somewhere revealed itself 2 days later. Keck Observatory detected faint flashes inside the black ring, hovering in the upper atmosphere flashes that seemed to correspond with radio transmissions from the Deep Space Network. It was as if the ring was listening. Every time a human transmission was sent into deep space, the ring pulsed brighter, absorbing it. At first, no one wanted to test it. But curiosity won. NASA engineers at JPL transmitted a simple binary pattern, a copy of the famous Arecibo message sent to M 13 decades earlier. Nothing happened. Then, 37 minutes later, every deep-sea sensor across the globe recorded a low, synchronized pulse. It wasn't random static, it was an echo of the Arecibo signal, returned not from space, but from beneath the oceans. The black ring hadn't just opened a channel, it had redirected communication, turning Earth into both transmitter and receiver. Burns whispered, "It's using the planet as an antenna." A week later, the ring shifted. Not by much, but enough for every satellite to notice. It was expanding slowly, steadily like a ripple frozen in time. The inner edges flickered with static arcs, forming brief outlines of structures that no camera could fully capture. And then, one night, James Webb caught something that broke even the most hardened scientists. Deep in the center of the black ring, a faint object emerged. Not glowing, not reflecting, but distorting everything around it. Light bent sideways, starlight stretched, and at the heart of the distortion, a shape took form. It was not mechanical, it was organic, pale, vast, translucent like a jellyfish in the void, with tendrils that moved through the fabric of light itself. The spectrograph readings from Webb showed no heat, no radiation, only an impossible absorption line that suggested a material older than the universe's own cosmic background. "This thing isn't arriving," Dr. Monroe said quietly over the transmission. "Is greater than it's being remembered." The phrase didn't make sense. But as Earth's magnetic field shifted again, the signal's true shape became clear. The planet wasn't just resonating with 3i Atlas. It was replaying something embedded long ago, a forgotten pattern written into its electromagnetic core. Something that had been dormant, waiting for a trigger. That trigger was 3i Atlas. Burns realized it too late. The object hadn't come here to communicate, it came to reactivate what was already here. Across the world, people began hearing the hum again. Deep, low, almost subsonic, vibrating through walls, metal, and bone. Animals fled inland. Whales beached themselves in coordinated lines. Compasses spun until their needles snapped. And then, on a quiet night over the Pacific, a faint blue pulse spread through the clouds. It wasn't light, it wasn't electricity, it was memory. Every telescope turned upward as the black ring shimmered, not opening this time, but reflecting. Reflected within it were impossible images. Cities that didn't exist, constellations that didn't match any known chart, and an outline of something vast stretching between galaxies. The reflection wasn't showing space as it was showing space as it had been. And at its center, the faint silhouette of 3i Atlas appeared once more, not as a glowing disk, but as an open, ancient structure, a gate, incomplete, waiting for one final sequence. Burns' voice broke the silence in mission control. "Is greater than whatever that thing was, it's not done with us." The reflection began to ripple. At first, it was subtle, a shimmer across the sky that most people mistook for atmospheric distortion. But when astronomers compared live star charts with the reflected constellations, something horrifying emerged. The stars inside the ring weren't wrong. They were older. Constellations that hadn't existed for millions of years appeared intact, as if the ring was showing a version of the universe frozen in time. Dr. Munro was the first to understand what it meant. "It's not just reflecting light," she whispered, staring at the temporal data from the European Southern Observatory. "It's reflecting time." Every second, the ring shimmered brighter, sinking more deeply with the electromagnetic field surrounding Earth. The magnetic oscillations matched the same frequencies stored in Voyager 1's telemetry archives, dating back to the probe's first encounter with interstellar plasma. That data, long thought to be noise, now appeared to be a precursor pattern. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it had encountered Voyager decades before it reached us. Then, one by one, global atomic clocks began to desynchronize. GPS signals drifted. Light-speed communications between satellites began to lag by nanoseconds. It wasn't much, just fractions of time, but across systems, those fractions compounded into chaos. By the second night, the lag became visible to the naked eye. If you looked at the moon through a telescope, its reflection in the ring appeared a second ahead. The past and the present were slowly tearing apart. At JPL Pasadena, Burns and Munro reviewed new frames from the James Webb Telescope, which had been redirected toward the heart of the ring. The images revealed a structure massive, spiraling, expanding outward from within the distortion. It wasn't entering space-time. It was rewriting it. Hubble's spectrograph confirmed the impossible. The wavelengths surrounding the structure were consistent with tachyon emissions, theoretical particles that travel faster than light particles that could, in theory, move backward through time. Burns muttered, "If this thing controls them, it's not coming from the future. It's bringing the future here." All across the world, time anomalies began to manifest. In Alaska, researchers saw auroras that played in reverse lights climbing from the horizon back into darkness. In South Africa, radio telescopes picked up echoes of transmissions not yet sent. In Chile, deep beneath the Atacama Desert, neutrino detectors started logging events from negative timestamps, signals from before the sensors were even activated. The planet's timeline was folding. At 2:14 GMT, the ring reached full synchronization. The reflection stopped flickering, it became perfectly still, perfectly silent, and perfectly black. Then the stars inside began to move. They twisted, rearranging themselves into a pattern, a spiral of light forming an image so massive it stretched across the entire visible field. When the pattern stabilized, supercomputers across NASA, CERN, and Kyoto's Space Observatory matched it against deep space records. It wasn't a random shape. It was Earth's magnetic field, magnified 1,000,000 times, mirrored through space-time. And at its center was the unmistakable outline of 3I Atlas. Except this version wasn't damaged. It was complete, a colossal, symmetrical structure glowing with crystalline geometry like a living cathedral of light. Munro's breath caught as she compared it to the early radar images. This isn't what's in our sky," she said. "This is what it used to be." The realization hit the room like a shockwave. 3I Atlas hadn't just come to Earth, it had returned. Somewhere in Earth's deep prehistory, long before humans, before even the moon's stable orbit, something had left this planet, something that built 3I Atlas. And now, across eons, it had found its way back. Then the reflection blinked. Once, twice, and a blinding red fissure tore through the ring. A pulse. low and thunderous, rolled through the atmosphere. The ocean surged, power grids failed. The fissure expanded into a glowing chasm of red and blue energy, and deep within that light something enormous began to emerge. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't a structure, it was a presence, vast, conscious, aware. Every instrument that tried to scan it returned the same reading, infinite density. On the comm line, Burns spoke the final words anyone would hear before the feed collapsed into static. Is greater than, we thought 3I Atlas was coming to us, but it was always inside us, waiting for us to remember. The feed went dark. Then the hum began again, louder, sharper, this time pulsing in sync with the heartbeat of the planet itself. The hum spread across the planet like a tide. It started faint, a vibration you could only feel if you stood still and listened, but within hours it became impossible to ignore. Metal doors trembled, windows sang. Every phone and radio speaker emitted the same barely audible tone, no matter if they were turned on or not. At first, scientists thought it was global resonance, a byproduct of Earth's electromagnetic chaos. But then reports began pouring in from all over the world. People were hearing things inside the hum. Voices, whispers, memories that weren't their own. A woman in Argentina described remembering walking under a triple sun, something she couldn't have possibly seen. A pilot over the Pacific heard ancient words in a language no linguist could identify. And an old fisherman in Iceland, who had been deaf for 20 years, suddenly began to hear again not voices, but tones, perfectly harmonic, rising and falling in a rhythm that mirrored the pulse of the black ring above. At the Harvard-Smithsonian Center, Dr. Eliza Monroe sat surrounded by monitors, each one pulsing to the same frequency. Her voice was low, trembling. Is greater than, it's not a sound, she said. It's data, structured frequency. It's feeding into our neural pathways like code. Tests confirmed her fear. The hum wasn't entering through the ears. It was traveling through electromagnetic fields directly into the human brain. Everyone on Earth was slowly being synchronized. In the Atacama Array, a supercomputer decoding the signal began to display images not in video form, but as mathematical projections. The system was translating electromagnetic interference into patterns of memory. The first clear image that emerged was a landscape, but it wasn't Earth. A red horizon split by twin suns, massive black towers stretching into amber skies, oceans of light. The geometry was too perfect, too deliberate. And at the center of it all, an immense structure that looked identical to 3I Atlas, except this one was still alive, pulsing with power. Are we seeing their home? Someone asked. Monroe shook her head. No, she whispered. We're seeing ours. Satellite footage began to show magnetic vortices forming over major continents, not destructive storms, but shimmering rings that reflected fragments of that alien landscape. Wherever the vortices appeared, people beneath them reported the same phenomenon. Shared dreams. Entire towns began dreaming the same things, the same shapes, the same sounds, the same memories of working on colossal machines made of light and crystal, speaking to each other through frequencies instead of words. Burns' team at NASA JPL cross-checked EEG data from subjects across 5 continents. the brainwaves of people who had never met, never spoken, and lived oceans apart, all synchronized perfectly. "What if we're not remembering them?" Burns said quietly. "What if they're remembering through us?" The hum intensified. Satellites began to drift out of orbit, not randomly, but aligning into geometric patterns around the planet, the same patterns seen in the reflection. Then something new appeared on James Webb's deep space feedlight signatures forming behind the black ring, stretching outward into the void like arteries connecting to something unseen. For the first time, astronomers could trace where the energy was going. It wasn't dispersing, it was anchoring. Every time Earth's magnetic field pulsed, the connection strengthened, and with each pulse, the reflection inside the ring grew brighter, showing clearer images of what lay beyond. Cities, mountains, colossal structures drifting in dark space, and within one of them, movement, not mechanical, not random, deliberate. A silhouette, humanoid, but vast, began to take form, suspended in that reflected world. As its features sharpened, the hum deepened. Heartbeats everywhere began to sink to it, the rhythm of something ancient awakening. Every major observatory went silent. And then, for the first time since 3I Atlas arrived, a signal came through crystal clear, modulated through every open frequency on Earth. Is greater than return complete. Memory restored. Screens went black. The hum stopped, and for a single perfect second, the world stood still, silent, weightless, aware. Then, as if on cue, the stars above shifted, not because the Earth moved, but because time did. And then, time broke. For a few eternal seconds, everything, sky, sea, thought, fractured into silence. The stars flickered out, not because they vanished, but because light itself stopped moving. Every clock on Earth froze at 0 hours. Every heartbeat paused in perfect rhythm. Then the sky opened. The black ring stretched across the heavens like a wound, and through it came images, not visions, but memories. Cities of glass and gold stood where oceans now roared. Rivers of light moved through the air, and beings human yet not drifted in vast chambers carved into the planet's crust. They were building something alive. The first generation of Atlas. Earth wasn't just a home, it was a memory core, and humanity, its living interface. Monroe's voice cracked over the comm line. Is greater than, we're not the descendants of builders, we are the builders. And with that realization, the hum returned one final, thunderous pulse that rippled through every atom on Earth. The ring collapsed inward, folding like a mirror closing on itself. As it did, all satellites caught the same final image. The completed 3I Atlas reflected one last time, now perfectly symmetrical, pulsing like a heartbeat in the void. Then silence. The black ring dissolved into starlight. The hum vanished, and Earth resumed breathing. When the systems came back online, every telescope pointed at the same region of space where the ring had once been. There was nothing there, except a faint blue glow drifting outward, slow and deliberate, like a signal leaving home. For hours, that glow moved deeper into the darkness, until it vanished beyond Webb's range. Burns stood by the main monitor, whispering to himself, is greater than it remembered what it came for, and it's going back. The world's scientists called it a phenomenon. The media called it a mystery. But somewhere, deep beneath the Earth's crust in caverns, no radar could reach, the hum still lingered, barely audible, perfectly rhythmic, like the ticking of a clock waiting to restart. And if you listen closely, you might hear it too, because maybe 3i Atlas never left. Maybe it's waiting for us to finish what we started. If this story sent chills down your spine, imagine what's coming next. James Webb isn't done, and neither is 3i Atlas. Don't miss what's revealed next. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and watch the next episode popping up right now.